Good evening, and thank you for joining us today on another program of On Call. It's a pleasure for us to be here and, for you to join us so that at least we can share a little bit of medical information with you as usual. I'm Thalissa McClure, and with me is Dr. Maxwell Adeyemi. Dr. Max?
Good evening, and how are you?
I am fine,
And may I
thank you.
use this opportunity to tell you and wish you a happy belated birthday. I know, we couldn't make a recording during your birthday. You did the time off and stuff like that. So if I could mamaga you a little bit, happy belated birthday. And I know you're about 26 now and you're still growing, that's nice. You look very good for your age. I wish you all the best, and I know the husband took you to, I don't want to know if it's Magdalena or somewhere nice. You had a
Dr.
good
Max, I'm not
fun.
very happy with you right now,
Oh,
so I don't even know if I should tell you thank you.
Klima was supposed to bring your cake, but we'll deal with that later.
Thank you, Dr. Max.
Yeah?
Thank
we don't want to fatten
much.
you up, bring a cake for you, so we had to make a choice between a cake and a chocolate or something,
Interesting.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And on today's program, folks, we're going to be speaking about diabetic foot care. I really don't know why Dr. Max had to go there. But today we're going to be speaking about diabetic foot care. And this is an area that Dr. Max is extremely familiar with. In fact, he brought a photo of a health thing that they're going to be having. Dr. Max, you're part of one of the groups, one of the organizations you're a part of.
Yeah, the Rotary Club is going to be doing a diabetes foot care training actually on the 4th and 5th of April. All right, and it's going to be a very extensive training on management of foot care.
And I have seen the photos, and it took my breath away, to put it mildly. Yes, it took my breath away. And I would not like to presume that anyone is comfortable with their feet looking the way some of these photos are looking. And so it's extremely important first, if you're not diabetic, to make sure that you maintain a lifestyle, because it's a lifestyle disease. So make sure that you don't get yourself in the place that you become diabetic. However, if you already are diabetic, then you need to take care of yourself. And especially as we're dealing with today, you need to take care of your feet. Dr. Max, why is it important, especially for diabetics, to take care of their feet?
It's important because the feet is one of the major areas where complication could occur in diabetes. We know that diabetes affects practically every part of your body. However, the feet will bear the brunt of the problem once the complication gets to that area in terms of damages to the feet. Okay, because one of the things that happen in diabetes is that the nerves are damaged and the blood vessels are also damaged. Now, the farther away that part of the body is from the heart, the smaller the blood vessels get. So the feet possibly have the tiniest and the smallest divisions of the blood vessels, the toes and the feet, and then coming up, they get bigger as they approach to the heart. Therefore, when you have diabetes, those are the finest and the smallest part are the easily destroyed ones, and therefore they tend to get damaged pretty early. The same thing with the nerves, because once the blood vessels are damaged, obviously the nerves are not getting nutrients, they're not getting oxygen, they're not getting food, they too also will start dying off. And therefore you will have issues with sensation. When the nerves get damaged, you start losing feelings. And you don't feel, and because you don't feel, when you get damaged or injured, and then little puncture wound might even be from a nail or thumbtack or whatever it is, you don't feel. And therefore, the ability to perceive that you are injured is not there anymore. And that serves as a focus of infection because you don't know and you don't pay attention to it really. Therefore, you could get infection. And once you get infection, because the blood vessels are also damaged, there is poor blood supply, poor nutrition, and poor oxygen delivery. There is slow healing process. And because there's slow healing process, the ulcers will fester and they stay longer to heal and also be at risk of other different type of infection. And therefore, when this happens, the ulcer that is very small like this gradually become a big issue, and then you could have gangrene, and then you could have, you know, other complication of those foot ulcers, which eventually may end up with infection of the bone called osteomyelitis, or cellulitis, which is infection of all the soft tissues around, and eventually amputation if care is not taken.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So from something as simple as a scratch.
Just a scratch, a little nail puncture, you go end up with an amputation if you don't pay attention.
So how does one pay attention to their foot?
Okay, as a diabetic, knowing that you have this risk, that is the beginning. So that from the very first day that you are diagnosed as being diabetic, you know and you try to appreciate the fact that, look, this is a potential problem. And therefore, when you acknowledge that, that should motivate you to have frequent checks of your feet on a regular basis. At least we suggest that every other day you check your feet. If you can't at all, every week you must check your feet.
When you say if you can't, why would you not be able to?
Well, there's some people for reasons of maybe they are busy or they just don't have the time sometimes, or they're not aware that they should do that, you know. And some of them, because of like the elderly folks, they may not be able to bend down properly to see under the foot. Their eye and their vision may not be that clear enough to see, you know, those kind of stuff. So in that instance, you can actually get the assistance of someone close by, a relative who can do that. For those who might not be able to bend down and do that, things like that, there are mirrors now that we have on a very long stick, like a selfie stick, and you can actually use it to examine, you know, your toes and the feet of the sole of your feet and stuff like that. So you need to regularly check.
But when you say check, Doc, I mean, based on what you're saying, it's not the, oh, I look down and I turn over and I figure, oh, all is good. It's a more in-depth thing. Okay.
The checking is basically what you can do, really is inspection, to inspect your feet. You look for the general anatomy of the leg to see how it is. Okay, you notice if there's anything different. You look at your skin. Is there any scaling, any cuts, any bruises, any wound, anything? You also look for the color. Is there any discoloration? Okay, and all those basic things you can do is basically like foot inspection. That you can do at home. The other thing is that if you have to visit the health facility, maybe the nurse or the doctor, you know, they should be able to check your feet for you and do some more detailed, you know, evaluation or examination. Then we can check for sensations, we can check for circulation, we can check for any kind of ulcerations, you know, on the crevices of the foot, you know. So the medical person will be able to do more detailed, you know, examination. But basic inspection, the patient should be able to do at home, really.
Yeah. Oh. So, but Doc, does that mean too that if you have such a challenge in terms of making sure that your feet are always well protected and so, then you should also, I'm thinking, you also need to pay attention to your footwear.
Right. I was coming into that because a lot of people don't appreciate this and they don't understand it very clearly, that footwear is a very, very important part of the management of the diabetic and the diabetic foot. All right. There are certain shoes that as a diabetic you just cannot wear. Okay. I will discourage the use of high heel shoes and very sharp pointed edges, shoe that squeezes your feet, you know, and very hard shoes like what we, you know, create a pressure abnormality on your pressure point, you need to discourage the use of such things. So even if you have to use those shoes by virtue of your work, like people in the police or fire or whatever, you could get some proper padding,
the inner
soles to have a soft, insoles that could at least take off the pressure from, direct hard surfaces. And people who wear slippers, very unprotected feet up and about, as a diabetic, that may not be a wise thing, okay? For farmers who possibly wear rubber boots and go into the bush and whatever, that in itself too could constitute a risk. So that if you have to do that, as soon as you come back, there are precautions that you can be trained to take, okay? For athletes who possibly will want to wear socks all the time, day and night, the same socks, 2, 3, 4 days, that also will put you at risk of fungus infection. And when you have fungus infection, it's a prelude to having a diabetic foot problem if you're diabetic, all right? So there's so many very interesting areas that we can talk about. I mean, we can talk whole day about foot care, but those little things, they matter. If you wear very sharp pointed edges, they squeeze your foot and then you develop corns, bunions, okay, and calluses, and that will become a weak point in your skin to create a sore, okay? Now, there's also what we call the biomechanics of movement. The way you move, the way you walk, also will, affect if and how you develop an ulcer. Because when you put your feet on the ground, there are parts of your feet that take the pressure. Some part will touch the ground and some don't. Okay, so you have that arcing of the feet. Okay, now when you are diabetic, in some cases, as you grow older, and for women as you reach 40 and 45 and your menopause comes in, there is a rearrangement and realignment of the bones of the feet that form the arch, and there could be flattening of that arch of the foot, so that instead of foot having an angulation like that, it straightens out, and therefore that alters your pressure distribution of your weight on your feet, and the pressure point becomes misaligned, and then you can develop ulcers, and that is what we call a shackled foot. So that could happen, and then you have ulcerations of different parts of the foot. You could also have what they call hammer toe, because as as time goes on, the bony architecture of the foot is altered. The tendons in the toes also become contracted. So instead of your toe being straight like that, they kind of come down like that, like a hammer, and then it's the tip of your toes now that are now touching the ground. And you see some people, the toes like that, they will flatten out like that, and that could also be a sore
because if
point.
that's the thing, and especially if you're wearing slippers, then you
Right.
could easily graze it along
that,
the floor.
and that could become a problem, what I call a weak spot for ulcers to develop. So there's so many little details that the patient may not be aware of, which we need to let them know. Okay, and the foot care training that we normally would do is to train the staff so that when they come in contact with this patient, they can educate them and let them know, okay, this and this is what will happen, this and this is what is going on, so that they can understand themselves, okay, and be able to take precautions on their own to avoid some of these problems.
But what is the danger of wearing slippers?
The dangers of wearing slippers is that because the slippers are not very protective of the foot, okay, you expose yourself to injuries, okay. For example, some people mine animals and they go into the bush with slippers. Some actually surprisingly go barefoot. When you do that, then you put yourself at risk. Maybe a little stump of a root of a
A
tree or something there, you bounce your feet on it, and then
broken glass.
anything could just give you a cut and whatever. And then there's some fungus that you can actually pick up in the soil as well as you go like that, you know, so that you could pick up with your slippers, and you could also pick up that when you wear rubber boots that is wet into the bush.
And if your foot sweat.
Right, and if your foot swell, there's a lot of moisture, and obviously the fungus will love the moisture, so they grow very rapidly in the moisture. And the same thing with athletes who possibly will wear their sneaker and whatever, and the socks every day.
Remember, some of them have lucky socks and stuff that they don't want to change because it helps them to win. But Doc, we're going for a quick break.
You understand?
And when we come back, it's not all doom and gloom.
No.
I mean, you can take restorative measures, you know, if you're a diabetic and maybe you have one of these foot conditions or ulcers as they're called. It can be remedied. It doesn't have to be, well, it depends on how far gone it is too. But Dr. Max is going to tell us a little bit more about that on the other side of the break. So stay with us. We're going to be right back.
Now you can watch TIN wherever you are, from anywhere in the world. If you have an Android phone, all you need is a data connection or Wi-Fi access. Simply follow these steps. Go to the Play Store. Type in Tobago Inspirational Network and click Search. Then click Install and Accept. In a few seconds, the icon will be loaded on your home screen. Simply click the icon, go to Live Stream, and click Play. Now you can enjoy your favorite channel 24 hours a day. You can also go to the Videos tab to watch programs you missed. For more information, call 868-297-6602. The Tobago Inspirational Network, realizing purpose, fulfilling destiny.
The Lord should come now. If you should close your eyes and wake up in eternity, what are you going to say to God?
Hi, I'm Minister Eloise Hines. Join me every Monday morning at 6 a.m. for the program Living by the Word on Tobago Inspirational Network, realizing purpose, fulfilling destiny.
And we are back. Thank you very much for staying tuned to today's program of One Call. And if you've just joined us, we are talking about diabetic foot care. And as usual with me is Dr. Maxwell Adeyemi. Before we went to a break, we were just speaking about, you know, the necessity of making sure that your feet are always protected. That is, if you are diabetic, and not taking things for granted because of, you know, what could happen to you and how you can develop ulcers just by maybe a little minor cut, scrape, if you're not taking the time to regularly check your feet. Right, Doc?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, however, if somebody does have a cut, a scrape, they check and they realize, I didn't see this here before.
Yeah.
How can they go about treating that? How do they deal with it? Just to make sure that it doesn't become this big ulcer that now we have to go to look at maybe amputation because it turned gangrene and everything else.
What we advocate, okay, I mean, when I say we, I mean at the level of the International Diabetic Federation, what they teach and stuff like that, and those of us that are involved in the foot care thing, is that first you need to make sure that you're inspecting your feet regularly. So you inspect, you look at the color, you look at the general anatomy of the foot, you look for any kind of cuts and bruises. So peradventure then that you feel something, and you realize, oh, I've got something here, or if you don't feel and you just in the process of inspecting, you notice there's a cut or a bruise or whatever. The first thing is that you've got to be aggressive. Okay, you don't take any chance, no matter how small it is. I normally will use the potato as a description of what happens with a foot ulcer. When you see a rotten potato, all you see on the outside is just the little black spot on the skin of the potato. But as you cut into the potato, then you'll be able to appreciate how deep that black spot would have gone. The same thing happens. So you may see a very small, opening or a little thing on the outside, you don't take chance to say, well, just a little thing. Because what will have happened then is that if germs have gone into in there, because the foot have a little, quite a lot of compartments and spaces in between the bones and the tendons or whatever, the infections will go in between and just spread. And then the next thing you will see is a swelling of your instep gradually, okay? And then the infection keeps just tracking up like that, all right? So as soon as you notice that little thing, you get very aggressive. Approach your healthcare provider, be a nurse or a nursing assistant, who will eventually assess the situation and say, okay, look, you need to see the doctor, or you go straight to your doctor if you so desire, and then an aggressive approach will be employed in terms of treatment. And once you do that, most of the time you are able to nip things in the bud, and avoid further advancement or deterioration of the foot.
How do you treat with ingrown toenails?
Okay, ingrown toenail is one of the pathologies or problems that may happen when you have the nails that are, folding over and going into the skin, into the flesh. Now, there are different treatments for it. You can surgically remove the toenail itself, okay, or you can actually do what they call a wedge resection, where you clip the edges that are growing in there and stuff like that. By and large, they are a potential problem, because once they cut into the skin, they create an opportunity for infection, and that could become a very serious problem. And therefore, you must be very careful with that, and don't allow any and anybody to cut your nails, and people who are not trained to deal with those things to interfere with them, because it could lead to other problems if you don't take it seriously. Yeah.
But Doc, how does one really take care of it? Do you cream it? Do you not cream it because maybe cream will make it too soft? Do you put lotions? Do you need to avoid certain? How does one go about it?
It is very essential that you moisturize your feet as a person, so that when you bathe in the morning, you don't leave your skin dry and scaly right through like that, because when you do that on a regular basis and the skin gets very dry and scaly and whatever, it could create and lead to a weakness also in the skin itself, and then you can scratch it or something, scratch it, and then you have an opening one. But a very minor opening in the skin creates an opportunity for any kind of bacteria to get inside, So when you bathe regularly, you cream your skin regularly, moisturize regularly, so that you keep it in mint condition, and stuff like that. And if you peradventure have any kind of fungus infection, you have to treat it immediately, because fungus weaken the general anatomy of the skin and create a weakness, a weak link, that germs could penetrate the skin into the soft tissue.
Is there a way that you can, at least, since we know that because it's the extremities, and so as you said earlier on, that there's reduced blood flow to there, and because of the blood vessels are a lot smaller and so on. Is there any way that you can stimulate the blood flow to your legs?
No, basically all you can do with that is just exercise, regular exercise, fit exercise, those kind of stuff. When you keep the blood flowing by exercise, you keep the circulation going, But there's some people who genetically or by risk of maybe sometimes different kind of job they have, they could be at risk of circulation problems, in which the valves in the veins that takes blood away from the feet back to the heart becomes defective, and there's a reflux of blood back into the feet, and over time then the circulation is compromised, and there is poor blood return to the heart, and so the veins and them are no longer working properly. So when you have that, it calls for different types of management. And there's some people who also have other type of circulation problem that involve the arteries, where the arteries get clogged and they get damaged and stuff like that. And those are more problematic to treat than anything else, because once you have an arterial blockage or arterial circulation problem, it means then the blood that is coming from the heart is not reaching their destination. So those ones are more problematic to treat, and they lead to amputation faster even than the venous problems.
So what we've taken away from today is, if you are diabetic, you need to, especially if you do not want your legs to be amputated, you need to take care. You need to, at least every other day, every day is good, but if you can't do it every day, every other day, inspect your feet, right? From bottom to top, check between your toes, make sure that there is nothing there that should not be, nothing added or subtracted.
True.
You also need to take precaution when you're walking, when you're going out, in terms of what type of footwear you have on, the frequency at which you use your socks or change your socks, right? As well as your shoes. Now I know sometimes, and this is one thing we didn't mention, you have to be careful too, in terms of sometimes you just take your shoes, especially if it's outside, and you just walk out and you slip your foot into your shoes and you go, you have no idea what is inside. And
it's also good to also make sure that when you wear your shoes and you sweat all day, you can expose them to some sunlight and put them maybe in your balcony or your whatever, somewhere where they can get some sun and, you know, dry it out, because that discourages fungus growth really. And once you use your socks once, I think the ideal thing is to discard it and wash it before you use again. All right, so could possibly have socks for each day, preferably.
yeah, so you don't develop any, you know, you don't allow the bacteria to grow, and then
the fungus especially, not necessarily the bacteria, but the fungus will grow with those kind of moisture environment.
Yes, Doc. So Dr. Max, is there any little note, any little thing that you want to add before we go as to caring for your feet as a diabetic?
What I would advise is that patients who are diabetic take control of their feet and appreciate that, you know, foot ulcers and the risk of amputation is a real threat once you are diabetic, and therefore, depending on how you manage your story and manage your situation would depend on the kind of outcome that you get. So you be proactive and prevent the ulcers rather than have to let the ulcer happen and have to be dealing with the ulcerations and battling to heal the wound, and wound healing is very, wound care and wound healing is very expensive, and it could be frustrating both to the patient and the medical practitioner as well. So prevention is usually a better approach in terms of diabetic foot ulcers.
Thank you very much, Doc, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Viewers, thank you for staying tuned. As usual, feel free to call us, feel free to send us a message. You know, let us know how this program has impacted you. If there are any questions, queries, comments, concerns, feel free to email tobagoinspirational@gmail.com. And thank you for viewing today's program of One Call. See you next week, same place, same time. Have a good evening.